Hi, my name is Reed Silverne. The name of this show is Fed Pride. The reason it's called Fed Pride is because I'm a federal worker and retired and proud to be one. And today, for me, it's February 20th. It's a Friday. That's when I'm doing this. However, this is live to tape. And because it's live to tape, if I make a mistake or accidentally have the bars and tones on live air, you will see it on Tuesday, February 22nd, or on Sunday, February 22nd, or on Tuesday, February 24th. And that itself shows the actual unprofessional charm of Fed Pride. So what am I going to talk about today? Well, first of all, I'm going to spin the world. Thank you, Google Earth. And I'm going to put the United States behind me because we're still in a economic crisis, and there's been a lot of activities and important events in the economic crisis this week. The Senate and the House passed the the stimulus bill that was agreed to in the House-Senate negotiations, I guess it's called a conference, last week that I talked about last Friday, and I think it was finally voted by the second house, which would have been the Senate, either Tuesday or Wednesday of this week, but a lot later than I had expected. The bill ended up being $787 billion, and the big hitters, I just happen to have a list of all the hitters all the way down to like $100 million. But the biggest hitters are tax cuts for individuals, $116.2 billion, $400 for every individual, $800 for every couple, an extra $250 for those who have either Social Security supplement or are on Social Security itself, SSI. The second biggest is health aid to states, and that's Medicaid costs. A lot of states, one of their biggest portions of their budget is their share of Medicaid. The government's going to pay the state share of Medicaid up to $87 billion. This whole thing runs for 2 years, and that should help the states balance their budget. Why is that important? Because the states are going to be laying off hundreds of thousands of people out of state government. They're not going to give any money at all to state and local governments, to water companies or water districts and education districts, and consequently this should save jobs. Obama said we will create or save 3.6 million jobs. They're probably not going to create hardly any, but they will save at least some of these jobs in the state. The other thing is if the state infrastructure falls apart, the roads fall apart, they lay off people from the police and fire departments throughout the state, the highway patrol, and so on and so forth, and the infrastructure starts to collapse. That will prevent business from coming back and the recession from ending. Extend patch for alternate minimum tax. What is that? I believe I talked about that last week. That is $69.8 trillion, and basically the original intention of the alternate minimum tax is that rich people who make hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, which is a lot of money back when this thing was instituted in the 1960s and 70s, I believe, that they don't avoid paying taxes completely through their deductions, charities, home mortgage, and everything else, so that they will pay a minimum of 26.8%. Their income is above a certain level. However, when they passed that, they did not have an escalator clause. So when inflation increases and wages increase, that more and more people aren't brought under the alternate minimum tax. After the Bush tax cuts, the effect of those tax cuts would have been much, much worse over time if the alternate minimum tax hadn't been scooping the upper middle class into the alternate minimum tax, basically wiping out the Bush tax cuts for those people completely. It got a little ridiculous to the point where Democrats were mad, as well as Republicans. So even Democrats wanted to relieve their upper middle class people, the yuppies and the college professors and all these people who are now paying alternate minimum tax over, I believe, 140,000. I forgot what the limit is. But if you have two incomes of two professional people working, even if they have an unbelievable upside-down mortgage and their credit cards are maxed and they're just about to go bankrupt, they're still stuck with this 26% tax over and above their payroll tax. $69.8 billion. And together, those two tax breaks alone, the actual stimulus payments out of taxes and the alternate minimum tax, that's almost $180 billion right there. Next biggest hitter, $53.6 billion, education and job training aid to states so that the states can support universities, K through 12 education, especially community colleges and essential services, so that, again, this is a part of the state budget which is going to be scooped up by the federal government for a couple years, and all these teachers, all these people that are training people to try to get new jobs, to retrain for new jobs, they'll be able to survive. Unemployment, as I said, is going to be 33 weeks, not months, not years, but 33 weeks of unemployment. That's more than 6 months. It's about 8 months. So if somebody is laid off, they'll be able to pick up unemployment. They still have to look for a job, and you got to prove it the following week. But the unemployment will be able to, the unemployed will be able to get something coming in 33 weeks. At a cost of what? $35.8 billion. Right now, people on unemployment, I believe it's up to 3 million people taking unemployment checks right now, about the highest it's been since the early 1980s, and it's probably going to end up being the highest in history. Extend and increase unemployment control. Now, the actual infrastructure, all these things we've gone through, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the number 6 is the first infrastructure part of the stimulus bill that's actually gets even talked about. And of course, it was the infrastructure that was going to create those jobs. And this is one of the things some of the Republicans had a problem with. $27.5 billion for highways and bridges. Then the next one, again, is health insurance for the unemployed. Right now, there's COBRA. If you are laid off and you're paying 40% of your health insurance, you can keep the employer-paid health insurance so long as you pay both halves. Yeah. Only catch is, let's say you have $300 a month that you're putting into your health insurance through your employer. Now you've lost your job. You have to come up with $750 a month just to keep your health insurance. So the government is going to subsidize the employer health insurance for those people who are unemployed from jobs that even had health insurance in the first place, $25.1 billion. Again, aid to individuals, food stamps. Food stamps are going to be increased $21 billion. Incentives to Medicaid and Medicare providers for health insurance information. In other words, try to standardize and computerize health insurance records. If anybody ends up in the ER, the emergency room, they'll be able to go to their little PDA. They'll be able to bring up that person's medical records. It's a safety thing, but it's also a savings thing, because if those are standardized, it should reduce the number and the amount of all the insurance companies, the hospitals, everybody's support costs, their overhead costs. $17.2 billion out of the federal government. Education and job training, Pell Grants. Pell Grants are these grants that the government gives to kids who are going to college. Right now, they're at $4,850. They're going to increase them to $5,350. That $500 increase, which appears to be about 15 extra percent, I'm amazed. There must be a lot of money going to Pell Grants. That's $15.6 billion right there. Then they're going to increase the eligibility for the child tax credit, which means that if you have a child, you not only pay less income taxes, you actually get a bigger check in your return. Credit is much, much better than a deduction. Deduction, if you have a very, very small amount of taxes that you've paid, really doesn't do you much good. Credit can actually offset all your taxes if worse comes to worse, and they're already talking about an $800 credit per family, and then an increased eligibility for the child tax credit. And then cash payment to seniors, disabled veterans, other needy, $14 billion. And then again, now here's another job creator. So we've gone through a whole page of these. We've only had one job creator so far, which was $27 billion for roads and infrastructure. And there's going to be $14 billion for tax incentives for renewable energy. Now, I could go through this. It's pages and pages and pages. However, as you can see, tax cuts to individuals, help for the states, and help for the people that we expect to be unemployed, help with their health insurance, extended unemployment, increased food stamps, and so on and so forth. Those are the big hitters out of the $787 billion. So some people are going to come back, and I've been hearing, been listening to talk radio and so on and so forth. This bill is not creating very many jobs. That's probably true. The aid to the state does save jobs, and if the states go completely under, the states can increase taxes. So in effect, the aid to the states is really a subsidy to prevent tax increases that are going to offset the credits that are supposed to get the economy started. So we could have had a situation. California just managed, with this, the help of this bill, to balance its budget. It's going to be drastically, even so, canceling out benefits, canceling out programs and vital programs. We'll see how California survives, increasing taxes. And if you have the states increasing taxes and the federal government decreasing taxes or giving away tax credits, there's going to be no stimulus to the economy at all. What else is going on? Well, the next big controversy is Obama's housing mortgage relief plan. That is $75 billion going straight to lenders, servicers, and to the individuals themselves in order to reduce the burden of upside-down mortgages and unbelievably high mortgage payments. People have taken on mortgage payments that they cannot possibly survive, partially because they didn't understand the terms, partially because the mortgage lenders would give anybody a mortgage. Why? Because they knew the CDO and the mortgage-backed securities, the derivative thieves, excuse me, would buy any mortgage in the world. And they did. They bought and bought and bought. And I do have a story about that, but I'll get into it presently, if I have time. However, what are the terms of the relief plan? One of the most important, right now, there was a program under the Bush administration for mortgage lenders to voluntarily reformulate mortgages and try to keep more and more people from going into foreclosure. I believe that it's false, but most people think, and apparently the government and the Congress thinks as well, that the cause of this crisis was foreclosures. Because foreclosures went up, the whole system collapsed. However, that is not true. the cause of this crisis is debt securitization. It's the idea that we can take a pool of mortgages and we can issue a bond, a fixed income bond, and that people are dumb enough to believe that they will get fixed incomes, that they will be guaranteed an interest rate off of a pool of mortgages or a pool of credit cards that nobody knows whether people are going to pay them off, whether people are going to default, or anything else. Nobody knows what the true income is of a pool of mortgages or a pool of credit cards or anything like that, or a pool of car loans. So the entire system of financing, car loans, short-term commercial paper, which is what businesses use to buy their inventory, credit cards, you name it, everything, mortgages, is all based on a concept that is in the face fraudulent and outrightly stupid. Nobody in their right mind would buy a CDO, a consolidated debt obligation, a bond based on a pool of debts, whatever it is, because they don't know what the income is. Now, even worse, they made those debt securitizations pay through and pass through. Pay through, I'm just going to pay you the 6%, but you have no claim on the underlying asset at all. Everybody says these were mortgage-backed derivatives. These were asset-backed derivatives. These derivatives are backed by nothing. They were never backed by anything. If they were pay-through or if they were pass-through derivatives, they are not backed by the asset. The buyer of the mortgage derivative has no claim on the basic mortgage or pool of credit cards or anything. All he has is a claim and a piece of paper that says you will get 6%. But it said one more thing. The default rate goes above what I just happened to buy a whole bunch of credit default swaps, then your investment is worthless. And that is what has occurred. And that has broken the entire financial system. So how are we going to fix this? Well, Obama wants to go to the mortgagors and the mortgagees. He wants to go to the homeowners and reduce the foreclosure rate. That is going to help those people. And it was supposed to help up to 9 million people. It's not going to solve the problem. I'll get into another plan that Geithner and Obama has that he claims will solve the problem, but I don't think it will. What about his mortgage plan? 1, allow bankruptcy courts to adjust the terms of the mortgage. It's forbidden right now. I think it became forbidden with the last bankruptcy law. It's a great idea. The thieves and the crooks who con people into mortgages, who con people into balloon payments, should not be guaranteed those balloon payments. They should be forced by courts, when people go bankrupt, they should be able to say, I am out of all my debts, or at least all my debts will be restructured, including your mortgage. If the person and the people and the thieves that issued the mortgages had taken a risk, which they don't appear to have thought they did, then tough bananas for them. The court should be able to step in and say, you are not going to make the payment you want. You are not going to get your balloon payment. These people are going to be able to stay in their homes, and now their payment is going to be this, because this is all they have left. Just like every other debt, just like credit cards. Credit card issuers, although there was a change in 2005, vendors, people who sold them furniture and so on and so forth on time, all those debts should be restructurable. Bankruptcy should be a fresh start. If you're worried about it and you're worried about loaning people money, then don't loan them money if you think they're going to go bankrupt. Lenders will lose the difference in the payments. See, what they did was they got a person down, they sat him down, they said, here is your nice $200,000 house. How much can you afford? I can afford $600 a month. Okay, starter teaser payment will be $600 a month. But here in the fine print says it'll be $1,200 a month in 2 years, and then there's a balloon payment of $180,000 in 10 years. That should not be tolerated, especially since those people, the $1,200 that is the real payment on that loan is 80 or 70 or 80% of this person's income. The lenders will lose the difference between what they lent, or the payment of what they lent, and 38% of that particular borrower's income. If the payment that after the teaser rate is done, after the 1 year or 2 years, has gone up to 80% of that person's income, that lender will lose the difference between 80% and 38% of that person's income. The government then subsidizes the next 7%. So let's say there's a $1,200 a month payment. The particular individual, the wife's lost her job and the husband's still struggling to make that payment. He can 38% of his income is $600 a month. 31% is $550 a month. Basically, the lender will lose until the payment's until the payment's $600, and then the government will subsidize the next $50. So the keys are 38% of the mortgager's income and 31%. $10 billion fund for mortgage insurance, $200 billion made available to Fannie Mae and to Freddie Mac, which are these semi-private companies which were basically bailed out by the government by the Bush administration, an extra $200 billion for them to loan for mortgages. And the worst thing is, one of the reasons that the voluntary loan adjustment procedures that Bush had set up, the Bush administration had set up, didn't work, was because the people who were dumb enough to buy these derivatives that were not really backed by the mortgages, they did not get a share of the mortgage at all. The people who are servicing the mortgage that were in that pool are afraid that they're going to get sued. So basically, the federal government's going to step in and say, you dumb bunnies who bought mortgage-backed derivatives that you should have known if you had bothered to read, can you read, were worthless, were not backed by the assets. You were not getting a share of the asset. Because you're not getting a share of the asset, you can't sue to adjust the mortgages in order to keep people from going into foreclosure. How bad are foreclosures? 1.5 million foreclosures already since December 2007, the beginning of this recession. 3 million likely foreclosures this year, and up to 8 to 9 million foreclosures throughout the entire crisis if nothing is done. And what about the CDLs? Well, the government is also putting together TALF, the Toxic Asset Relief, it's not program, that was TARP. It's a Term Asset-Backed Securities Loan Facilities, TALF. And there's $200 billion being given to this, a total of up to $1 trillion to help, of all people, hedge funds, hedge thieves, as I like to put them, buy back the toxic assets that they sold the banks in the first place. What do I think about this? Just for your interest, asset-backed securities that are not asset-backed, they're pay-through or they're pass-through. In 2006, $2,100 billion of these were sold. In 2007, $1,600 billion, that's $1.6 trillion. Last year down to $314 billion. This year, nobody's buying them at all. And we don't have an alternate system of supporting mortgages, credit card loans, and so on and so forth. It's a disaster, and I'm sure I'll be talking about this again. My name's Reed Silverne. Name of the show is Fed Pride, and I really appreciate what you're watching.